So welcome back, everybody. This is Nightflight, and today Eve Lorgen is back, and we are going to talk about Reptilian hosting, strip clubs, banks, and many more locations where you might not expect to be hosted. So, good to see you,
Yes.
Eve. Can you
That's fine.
believe that?
Yeah,
For a second, your name was gone. And how are you?
I'm good. I might be coughing with allergies, which is part of the norm now with all the, I call it the chemtrails, and that's
Mhm.
just normal now. And so I might cough and need a drink of soda in between. But I'm happy to be here. In fact, we were going to do this earlier, and then I wasn't prepared, and I hadn't slept well, and so I'm glad that we waited. Gave me a chance to review. It's actually one case, a woman. I don't like to call them cases, but it's a woman who was in the same state I am, who had an experience, and it actually wasn't reported to me until 2014 when I wrote the original. It was a two-part article. One of them was like reptilian hostings and strip clubs was the part one. And then part two was basically the update, which was an after interview where many other things were realized in this woman's life as a result of doing her healing and recovery and getting out of a toxic relationship and a family system and realizing how it is on the timeline of her experience in her life, that it all tied together in a certain way that is, I guess, how I want to present it. And one thing I will say too is that this has the quote, the giggle factor, or the weird, spooky, perverted thing that, people want to, laugh and giggle about reptilians and hosting and the weird sex strip club thing. But in reality, it's a predatory aspect of a particular non-human species working on this planet, in this realm, in a way that is harming humans and our society and our families. And so one of the interesting things about this woman's case when she came to me, and it wasn't just many people come to me because of the alien love bite, or they have a relationship with a false twin flame, or there's an entity attachment or whatever, but it went beyond the classic alien love bite. It was, she was married to a man for 23 years. So it was a 23-year marriage. And during really the last part of the marriage, she noticed the behavior of her husband got more robotic, more narcissistic, and he had a sex addiction, and he would frequent strip clubs where it would be the classic strip club where they would do the lap dances, or sometimes, private prostitution on the side, drinking bars, and not only one in the state where she went, where she, my same state, but I don't want to give you the city. But I guess he also went to a club, and I think it was in New Orleans, where once he started frequenting these strip clubs in this sex addiction, and it was after he got back from, I think, the New Orleans one, where something significantly changed in his energy field that showed that there was something going on that was weird and not right. So he became a little bit more robotic, um, more, well, he already had a splintered type of personality style of, let's say, someone who just didn't work on their trauma, and they have a low level emotional intelligence and are prone to being selfish, neglectful, and addictive in behaviors. And that was his personality style before he, quote, got hosted. So we know that there's a vulnerability of certain people. If they don't deal with their stuff and take personal responsibility, they become a threat not only to themselves, but the entire communities. And it's, I truly, this is where I stand, that people must take responsibility for doing their own healing work, so they're not as, affected by these predatory species, which will harm people over time. And I
Yeah.
just had to put that in there as a therapist, because this is something that I think people can manage if they know the causes and conditions of the vulnerability. Okay. I just wanted to put that out there. So as soon as he had a more of a dramatic shift in the personality, she noticed that he was acting more robotic and a little more selfish and sexually addictive. And she's starting a meditation practice where she would do like prayers and meditation. And then when she would do that, he would get like suddenly angry and want to distract her and prevent her from doing meditation. He kept trying to say, no, don't do that. Stop it. Stop it. So it'd be like, why would you want someone to stop doing a meditation practice when it's really not harming anyone? It's just, creating her own balance and in her life, what she needed. So there was already an entity driving to the disruption from a practice that could enhance our own perceptual abilities to perceive them. Okay, so there's always that interference factor going on. Like when you become aware, you'll start noticing things like that. So one of the things that she saw clairvoyantly, which I thought was interesting, was she saw what appeared like an iguana in almost a neon color outline. I think it was blue neon outline of an iguana.
I have an image of it.
Yeah, you could do the screen share if you want.
Up.
Yours might be better than mine because there were several images that she did because she was an artist. Oops. There we go.
Yeah. And yes. Here's
yeah, she saw it as a lighter colored iguana that was, the neon blue outline on the right shoulder. And then where the real hosting overshadowing is taking place behind, and sometimes it's locked into, let's say, the solar plexus or the sexual chakra or other areas, it creates this dark greenish murky color that kind of overshadows the aura and the person. But what she saw connected with the iguana was like this white, kind of like a white square box. So that was perceived also clairvoyantly. And how she figured this out is that when she first saw the iguana and the white box on the shoulder, it was as if that was the first sign and symbol that this courting of the reptilian took place when he went to this strip club like in New Orleans. And so it's almost as if, okay, you do these activities in architecture that is linked in with real technology connected to reptilians and reptilian ships. Okay, that sounds bizarre. But when that technology allows a courting to take place more easily, then the image of that interdimensionally in her psychic vision was like this white box on the shoulder. And then it was associated with the iguana, which was more like a symbol sign of a type of entity that was basically infecting the field and overshadowing. But iguanas, those are actually real pets that some people have, and they're actually have a reptilian characteristic that's similar to female hormones. They actually can emit the same type of female hormones. I heard that from somebody who had like iguana pets, and it was like one of these things that was really weird. They have the same kind of pheromone thing as certain females, which is weird, but that's off topic. I'll continue with, because I want to take it in the direction in which she became aware of this entire process and how it, on a timeline, you could see how it fits together in hindsight, the whole operation. Because I think that's the important thing in hindsight, like, oh, okay, there's a reason for this whole thing, even throughout her childhood, what she discovered later in regression, shadow work, and doing her healing work. So, okay, so she observed, the husband acting more robotic, not right. Okay. And then this thing on his shoulder, his right shoulder. And then during sexual activity, she noticed that she saw the reptilian like overshadow, and he would be acting like really robotic during the sex act too, and then she would see it and feel it as it overshadowed his energy field, almost like a complete hosting during about 45 seconds of the orgasmic response of sexual activity. So it was like the being could immerse itself fully during that 45-second period of time, but then after that kind of had to jump out a little bit, but it was still kind of connected. And so she said that perceptually, when that full hosting took place, she could see the face of the entity and the whole thing and it's much larger than the body of her husband. Usually they're much larger and taller. And then, but she couldn't see the face clearly when it was partially in and out, because it I don't know, it kind of masks itself when it's partially hosting. So that she felt the imagery of a clairvoyant's perception is much like this. I put an image on my website some years ago of a French healer named Stefan Cardinaux, who could perceive how entities look overshadowing an energy field and like the chakras they're holding on to with their hands and how it looks to a clairvoyant. So she was saying, yeah, it looked just like how this guy drew these things out, where, you know, the entity is coming from the behind and looking into the solar plexus and the sexual chakra and is like way towering over his head. And so they control the will with the solar plexus and also the sexuality to make them sex addicted, because it'll activate that chakra even more in sex addiction. We know that. I mean, we know that with enough people that I've talked to who have that quality going on with a reptilian thing. So as she noticed this happening, it was so disturbing to her during that particular time where she saw the full hosting. From that point onward, she was like, you know, didn't want to have sex with her husband anymore. And it was just, and then when the courting, it was almost as if when the courting was complete, and when, let's say, it's more strongly linked in the body, and she noticed a smell of her husband changing to like a bad smell. Like, I don't know if it was a pheromone, but it was like, it wasn't right. It smelled bad. It smelled wrong. It wasn't right. And it didn't, you know, you could take a shower. It doesn't matter. A lot of times the smell that they actually leave, and I've heard this before from female people who've had the reptilian thing, that they'll actually do sounds so gross. Sometimes they do a spray and then they leave that smell on the woman or the person who's being hosted. There's like, and you can't get it out of your nose. It's one of these, I think it's a spirit thing too, that when someone has a like a demon, a lot of times that demon has a smell. And just like saints and angels will leave like the smells of flowers and stuff. You'll see the opposite with like the darker, you know, reptilians.
So why do you think strip clubs are a good venue for alien intervention?
Well, what she saw, and this you could read on my website. I'll give you links later so you could read the whole write-up of the part 1 and part 2.
I have the link. I will put them in the show.
Okay. Yeah. And there's actually an image.
I think I have an image for that as well.
Yeah, show the image and I could talk about it. There might be a couple of them. One of them is like the funnel shaped thing. That's it's like an energy field. It's an interdimensional energy field. See, this funnel thingy almost looks like a teepee. It's actually a shape, interdimensional thing that is over the building of the strip club, but it's partial interdimensional. But I think it ties in with how even the angles in the walls and the structure of the architecture of the building it's important, right? It facilitates how it comes in. So it's like a funnel that comes in, and then like where, let's say, the prostitute was like, she saw it in her mind's eye. She was like remote viewing like what happened. And when, I guess when the prostitute was lap dancing, and then where he opened up his energy field during an orgasmic servicing, his energy field opened up to the technology, like coming in more strongly over his energy field, and that the things that were in her energy field were basically being embedded into him. So all her stuff, you know, like if you're a prostitute, you're going to take in a lot of bad energy, and that everybody in the strip club got courted, you know, if they basically participated over time. And so all her stuff in her field would kind of be dumped into his. So you just basically garbage dump in your energy field, and then you get hosted. But then the courting is actually part of the interdimensional thing, which above that funnel in the next image, like she showed there was and I don't know how the words she used, it was like a duct system that she saw interdimensionally that kind of maybe worked with the energy and the communication of actually a ship that was interdimensional over the building. Okay, so you're actually having reptilian ships. So she saw a reptilian on the ship with like all these computers, where he's like watching all these different people who are being courted from that particular building or wherever they had their technology. So they're basically monitoring all the courted, hosted people's behaviors and what they're doing. I mean, it's like one big peep show with these like reptilians like orchestrating all this stuff. But these weren't the only buildings that she saw that were affected by this type of interdimensional technology. So the strip club, you know, it's like the lower, you know, sexual energy that, you know, reptilians that's just their thing, right? So that would be an organized crime and just the lower energy addiction atmosphere. But it was also seen in, she saw it over a major bank that had a dome-like structure that would be the architecture of like a phallus, like a circumcised phallus. But the way that the architecture was designed, the ships would also be hanging out over those buildings, like banks and stuff, and then courting the people in there, so that their consciousness would become more and more frequency matched with the reptilians and their agenda and their hive mind, and how they would compel people to be in certain states of consciousness and then just court them directly to host them. So in this hosting case, it was, I would say it had to do with more technology facilitating it, as opposed to, let's say, the old-fashioned method of just being a sex addict, or a split person who hasn't dealt with their trauma and they're a narcissist and then they're sex addicted, and they're just like open field for entities. So it just facilitated that more easily with the technology.
Yeah, here we have just the funnel over, let's say over the strip club. Yeah. Here we can see the waitress. And this one, I guess, this is, here you see the ship. Here you see the strip club. So actually, what is going on there is technological courting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What is this one, the white one?
She just seemed it was like a duct system that helped. Maybe when energy moves from one form or dimension to another, it acts like a Fourier analysis transformation of that energy, so it can go into the realm and the body of that dimension. So you might have it like coming from the ship and coming from these interdimensional realms, and then once it hits the physical realm, it has to like change its frequency so you can lock in to the bodies of the people or the architecture. So it looked like it came from underground, but I don't know if that's what she meant in that particular drawing, because she was seeing all this like interdimensionally in her third eye, basically, like remote viewing how this all worked together.
Yeah. And so, is this some additional courting here that goes way out?
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It might even, I don't know if that's stars or underground. Like in the underworld, for example, you can have things come in from the underworld, like portals. So it could be an underworld kind of connection as well. Anyway, so that was, I think that was important, because we know there's a technology that's facilitating so that when it took place, she definitely noticed not just a personality shift and a smell and the sex addiction thing, and acting more robotic and almost uncomfortable in the, I've heard this before, in the lower body, let's say the solar plexus and below, or walking. Sometimes they would act clumsy, as if they don't really know how to operate the human body, like they're still a little clumsy like in the body. So I've heard this before with when they become fully hosted, or when they're in that process, they can act a little bit clumsy and like emotional intelligence, like real stupid. And there was a thing where she noticed it was almost as if this is a concept that it sounds really dangerous and creepy, but if there's, let's say, a complete replacement from the original person and personality, then they might have a replacement thing going on, which is a little bit of a different, more dramatic possession. But there's a thing where she noticed his memories were stored differently in his mind. So she was basically kind of remote viewing and perceiving how his mental system was working, how his thought process was, how his memories were. And so when she did this thing where, let's say, normal in your normal everyday people do the same things, habits, she would deliberately did something out of habit on purpose to so that she came home earlier at a different time when he was home, I don't know, working in the garage or doing something at home. But because she came in and did something different, it caught him off guard, so that it was as if he was like another person who didn't even recognize her. And he had to, like, the program had to hurry up and get reinstalled with the memories to like fake it that, oh yeah, he's her husband, and that, oh, she just came home early or whatever. But it was like this moment of confusion, as if the memories had to get reshuffled to be like the husband again, because he's really not. Or it was that weird feeling that there was like a takeover of something else operating in the mind. So that's what was weird. So so anyway, she did, get eventually apply for, a separation and a divorce. She had, I think, 3 children who were affected by this. And then there was something going on. So she did like recovery work. Okay. So in part of her recovery work, she did some regressions to find out, because here's another aspect. She wanted to investigate how felt she was sabotaged from finding her true twin flame, or the true healthy love relationship. So, and this is a common finding with my labs and abductees, where it's like they don't want these particular kinds of people or women to have a healthy, good relationship, because they're powerful people. They're very perceptive, and they're like reality creators. They're more powerful reality creators and influencers, actually. And this was proven, and this might have been the reason. Let me go back to her memory first. Okay. So in her regression, she wanted to find out, what is the causes? Why these things happened? Why did my husband get hosted? Why I kept having, like, one of her first marriages was a marriage to a psychopath. So it was like a bad love bite, but that only lasted 2 years. And then the second marriage, thought it was okay. It turns out this guy's a fucking host. So like, what the hell's going on? So she couldn't remember anything, but she did do a regression. And what came up was something that when she was like an infant, she was only like 3 months old, and her mom had taken her to a daycare neighbor. So it wasn't like a facility, it was more like a private person's home who did daycare. So at this daycare, and what she saw and reacted in the memory, only a 3-month-old memory, this is pretty difficult to get, but there was a person who lived at the house who was in association with like a magician, black magic priest kind of thing, where the black magic priest came over one day during the babysitting and was trying to do some kind of weird ritual on her. And I don't know if there was a sexual abuse thing that happened, or what the attempt was with a ritual with her as a 3-month-old, but her higher self intervened during this process and caused it so that the priest really couldn't complete what he was wanting to do, and actually blew him down, like he fell over, like some powerful force intervened and literally stopped the process. But there was still a bit of a ritual and a bit of a trauma associated with that 3-month thing that seemed to, I don't know, set the stage for maybe a programming in her life to be captured by the satanic energies that, for one reason or another. But when I look at her qualities as a human being and as a woman, she would be like I don't know if she was a starfire, and that's just a name we're using, but somebody who obviously has a quality that is a cut above, okay, with respect to perception, with respect to actually power of reality creation.